is a special edition of WeatherScope with the latest winter storm update.
Good afternoon, Bill Keneally with you in the Weather Channel Forecast Office. We continue to watch the snow pile up in the Washington, D.C. area. Reports coming in now in the mountains of Virginia and North Carolina of as much as 27 inches of snow in Boone, North Carolina, 2 feet of snow, 24 inches on the ground in Blacksburg, down around Virginia Tech, a few hours southwest of Washington, D.C. In Washington, D.C., the Weather Channel crew, Jeff Morrow, is live. Jeff, it looks like the snow keeps on keeping on.
Yeah, Bill, we've had actually another change in the kind of the complexion of the storm here. As you remember, when we were out here earlier, we had a lot of very heavy snow, and it was snowing for hours like that. Then it kind of tapered off a little bit and mixed in with a lot of sleet, and it seemed to cut down on the accumulation a lot. Now the sleet appears to be pretty much over. The snow is a very, very fine, very small grain snow, but the wind has definitely started to pick up and the wind chills dropped. So I don't know that we're getting much more in the way of accumulation right now, but we are getting a lot of blowing snow, and the wind chill factor has to be well below zero.
And Jeff, I suspect in the next couple of hours that wind will start to back a little bit to the northwest. Looks like our low pressure area is starting to take shape off of the Virginia Capes, and because of that, the rain snow line now has gone back on down south of Norfolk, down into the Virginia Beach area.
Yeah, so we expect probably to go back over to maybe some heavier snow before all is said and done, before the night's over. Do you think that's probably a pretty good guess at this point?
That sounds like a good bet. I think that upper low back over Kentucky will still have to pass east of you before you get out of that snowfall, but I think it may become a little more sporadic from here on out as some of that drier air that we talked about, that dry slot, starting to come up in parts of Virginia. Jeff Morrow, thank you very much. We'll come back with you in about 30 minutes' time. I want to talk more about the pictures for you. We got some video. We also have some radars to show you as well. Let's start you off by showing you the radar, I believe. We'll have the radar for you showing what's happening over the eastern states. There we go. You can see our snow is moving on up. Boston now getting snowfall, snowing in Boston, snowing just about on top of Albany, New York. The airport was not reporting it last hour, but I suspect they will be this hour. And there's your snow around the New York City area, coming down at the rate of 1 to 2 inches per hour in the city. And once again, the rain snow line still well to your south. We'll try to depict that rain snow line for you now. It's pretty much around Cape May, New Jersey, near Salisbury. Then it kind of bends straight down, as opposed to being over Norfolk. Now it's right about on the beachfront. That is a function of a developing area of low pressure right now, right about here, just off of the Virginia Capes, and that is going to be the reason, I think, that the snow will stay intact rather than seeing much more of a mix to sleet or freezing rain around the Washington, D.C. area, as we tend to see that cold air starting to drain back down the Potomac Valley. There's our low pressure area. It's heading northbound, and once again, the storm history has been just incredible. Locally, 1 to 2 feet of snow has fallen in parts of Virginia and North Carolina. We can bump that up a bit, too. We mentioned Blacksburg, 24 inches. Boone, North Carolina, 27 inches of snowfall. We have Jill Brown now, and we want to take you live to New York City, and into the park we go. Jill Brown has the latest as our snow is flying and night is descending on the Big Apple. Jill?
Hi, Bill. You can see now, here we are at Central Park on the south side, and we're just off Central Park West. Now, you probably could have earlier seen traffic going past behind you, but visibility has gone down so much, even if a couple of cars come by, I don't even know if you're going to be able to see them. I mean, you can even see the accumulation on my sleeve from standing here the last 5 minutes. Just in about the past half hour, the snow has really picked up, so an inch or two an hour definitely seems about on track. There is a state of emergency now, a snow emergency on Long Island and here in the city. This is a pretty rare event. Sure, they get a lot of snow, but not this kind of snow. And for the first time in 18 years, school is canceled. We've seen a lot of people out today on the sleds, cross-country skis, cross-country skiing right down Central Park West, which is, again, something you don't do very often around here. So far, actually, it's still not too bad out here, at least with the winds. That's when things are going to get pretty ugly. Right at the moment, the winds are pretty light, but as the winds start picking up and the snow continues like this, it's going to get worse through the afternoon. Fortunately, a lot of the roadways, I think they've gotten the folks to stay home or to go home, because we haven't had as many reports of accidents like we did a little bit earlier in the day. Probably a lot of folks trying to get out and beat the snow, and they didn't.
I'm sure a lot of comparisons being drawn now to the winter of '93, '94, and not in a positive light either, as I think in New York City's case, the winter of '93, '94 bringing over 5 feet of snow, and I'm sure a lot of folks are just not very optimistic this time around.
No, and there's not a lot of tourists here this
No.
time of year. I think we know why now. The few tourists that we have seen are extending their stay by necessity. JFK and LaGuardia are closed. Newark's still officially open, but I would venture to guess you're not going to be able to catch a flight out of there, or if they are, they're going to be rare. So anyone traveling today, the transit system, the public transit system is the best idea. Subway's still doing fine.
Across Connecticut, snow impinging on the Albany area as we speak, and that's all snow in New Jersey. Some sleet maybe mixed in. A couple little breaks around Dover and south of Baltimore, but generally it's going to be a major snow, a crippling snowfall, and that has been the case back in Ohio as well. Dayton, Ohio, 14 inches of snow. Louisville, Lexington, anywhere from 8 to 12 inches. You can see the turning motion. That is that upper level low pressure area over the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And even by tomorrow, forecasting by Monday morning that low to be right around New York City. So a major concern will be the chances of flooding at the times of high tide around the city. And we'll have to watch the chances of flooding. Could be some very severe beach erosion on up into Boston and Cape Cod during the day Monday. We'll take a break. We'll update you with your hometown weather and have your 5-day forecast coming up.
Through a lot of nor'easters up around New York and Philly. When the low is this far south, there's still a lot of precipitation yet to fall. Washington has been mixing with a lot of sleet and kind of slacking off a little bit. So we're not sure exactly whether the heavy snow will develop again in Washington. It'll be on and off heavy, most likely several more inches after getting 13 to 15 already in the D.C. area. So you've got your foot, and it's up to about 7 inches now in New York City and Newark. Fast adding up to that. But high pressure most of the nation. By tomorrow we get a bit of a warm front with Chinook winds, Denver back into the 50s, and some snows in the northwest. Southern Cal continues that warm, dry pattern. This low pressure Jersey, some freezing rain and sleet mixed in, maybe even liquid rain, Delaware coastline, locally 2 to 3 feet. That's right, this is going to be pushing some of the all-time records. Philly to Washington, Baltimore, maybe even New York, a low to mid-20s of inches of snow is the record. So we could be seeing something like that if this thing really gels. Nice weather around Southern Cal, but the cold weather not maybe as severe as it has been in the last few days. We have really, you're still watching and waiting in a lot of New England and upstate New York, the snow line into Hartford, Connecticut, and Providence and back on into southeast New York. Blizzard conditions, visibility is less than 1/4 mile widespread from New York City down into Philadelphia, the Baltimore area. You're getting a little break in the action in Washington, D.C., thankfully. So that's good. But it's probably going to start up again, at least to some degree, in Washington as we go on in time. The Intermountain West, a little bit of icing, maybe Spokane or Yakima, Washington, on into Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, so be careful with that. But back east, for the overnight blizzard conditions, you know, the wind really hasn't picked up that much yet from this storm, but it will, especially along the coastline, and some tidal overwash around Seabright, New Jersey, Long Island Sound. The flood warnings are out. Some rain a little further south, including parts of Florida, where you have a special marine warning around the Keys. Stay tuned for more on our storm.
Presented